Hello, friends. Welcome to my channel. Today I am talking about this video, a powerful story, the power of not reacting. Daniel sat alone in his small apartment. The clock showed 11 at night. His phone screen glowed brightly in the darkroom. A message waited on the screen. It was from his brother Marcus. The words were cruel and sharp. Daniel's fingers moved fast over the keyboard. He wanted to answer immediately. He wanted to hurt Marcus back with words. But something made him stop. He remembered a lesson from many. Months earlier, he remembered an old man named Walter. This story is about that lesson. It began almost 1 year before this night. It began with a man who reacted to everything. Daniel Cole was 32 years old. He worked at a small marketing company. In the city, he was smart and he worked hard every day. His co-workers respected his ideas. His boss trusted his skills. But Daniel had one big problem. He could not stay calm. When someone criticized him, he got angry fast. When someone insulted him, he answered right away. If a message annoyed him, repliait d'une séquide fnotting folk, och he believed silence meant weakness. Daniel believed that if he stayed quiet, people would walk over him. He believed a strong person always fights back. This belief controlled his whole life. Every morning, Daniel checked his phone. Before he even got out of bed, he answered messages fast, without thinking. He wanted to prove himself right every single time. At work, Daniel had a co-worker named Rena. Rena was calm and quiet, and she rarely argued. Daniel often thought she was too soft. One morning, Rena made a small comment about Daniel's report. She said, "I think this part is a little confusing." Daniel's face turned red immediately. "Confusing?" Daniel said loudly, "I spent 3 days on this report. Maybe you should read it again." Rena looked surprised by his tone. She did not expect such a strong reaction. She simply walked away without saying more. Later that day, Daniel felt bad about the moment. He knew Rena was only trying to help him, but he did not apologize to her. Daniel told himself that apologizing showed weakness. He told himself that Rena should have said it more carefully. In his mind, the problem was always someone else. This pattern repeated again and again in his daily life. At the grocery store, a stranger bumped into him. Daniel turned around and said something sharp and angry. The stranger apologized quickly, but Daniel kept talking. He wanted the stranger to feel bad. He wanted to win the small argument. On the road, another driver cut in front of his car. Daniel pressed his horn hard and shouted. Through the window, his heart raced with anger for the next 10 minutes. At home, Daniel often argued with his girlfriend, Elena. Elena was patient, but even she grew tired sometimes. Small disagreements often became big fights. One evening, Elena said something simple. "You always need to have the last word," she said. Daniel did not understand what she meant. "I'm just being honest," Daniel replied. "Someone has to say the truth." Elena sighed and said nothing more that night. Daniel did not see the pattern in his own life. He believed every reaction was necessary. He believed every argument was worth fighting. His social media was full of arguments, too. If someone posted an opinion he disagreed with, he commented. Immediately, he wrote long messages defending his point of view. Sometimes strangers online insulted him back. Daniel stayed up late, replying again and again. He lost sleep over conversations with people he would never meet. Slowly, without noticing, Daniel's life became stressful. He felt tired all the time. He felt like he was always fighting someone. His friends started avoiding difficult topics around him. They knew any small comment could start an argument. Some friends simply stopped calling him as often. Daniel noticed people were quieter around him. He thought it was because they respected him. He did not realize it was because they were afraid. At work, his relationship with his boss became difficult too. His boss, Mr. Patterson, once gave him feedback about a project. Daniel argued instead of listening. "I disagree completely," Daniel said firmly. "This project is exactly what the client wanted." Mr. Patterson looked tired and did not argue further. After that meeting, Mr. Patterson stopped giving Daniel new projects. Daniel did not understand why. He believed his boss simply did not appreciate good work. Weeks passed, and Daniel's stress grew heavier. He reacted to every message, every comment, every look. He felt like the world was against him. But the truth was simpler than that. Daniel was creating most of his own problems. His quick reactions were pushing people away. One Saturday morning, Daniel visited a small park near his apartment. He often went there to clear his head. After stressful weeks, the park had tall trees and a quiet walking path. That morning, Daniel noticed an old man sitting on a bench. The man was feeding birds with small pieces of bread. His name, Daniel would later learn, was Walter. Walter looked calm and relaxed. His face had deep lines like someone who had lived through many storms, but his eyes looked peaceful, not tired. Daniel sat on a bench nearby. He was checking his phone, frustrated about another message. A rude comment from a client had ruined his morning. Without thinking, Daniel spoke out loud. "Some people are just impossible," he said angrily. Walter looked up and smiled gently. "Bad morning?" Walter asked. Daniel looked at him a little surprised. "You could say that," Daniel replied. Daniel explained the situation quickly. A client had sent an angry email about a small mistake. Daniel had already written 3 angry replies in his head. Walter listened carefully, without interrupting. When Daniel finished talking, Walter said, "Something simple. Have you replied yet?" "Not yet," Daniel said. "But I will, and I will make my point clear." Walter nodded slowly, thinking. "Can I tell you something?" Walter asked. Daniel shrugged, not really interested. "Sure," he said. "When I was young, I was just like you," Walter said. "Every insult got an answer. Every mistake got an argument. I thought that made me strong." Daniel looked at him with curiosity now. "What changed?" Daniel asked. Walter smiled a little, remembering something painful. I lost my best friend because of it. Walter said quietly, we argued about something small, and I could not let it go. I needed to be right more than I needed him. Daniel stayed silent for a moment. The story felt strangely familiar. He thought about his own friendships slipping away. After that, I made a decision, Walter continued. Before I react to anything, I ask myself one question. Does this really need my response? Daniel repeated the words in his mind. Does this really need my response? It sounded so simple, yet so strange. Most things don't, Walter said. Most angry words are not really about you. They come from someone else's bad day, not your mistake. Daniel thought about the client's email. Again, maybe the client was simply stressed about their own deadline. Maybe it truly had nothing to do with him. But if I don't answer, Daniel said, people will think I'm weak. Walter shook his head slowly. Silence is not weakness, he said. A calm person is not weak, Walter continued. A calm person has simply learned to choose their battles. An angry person fights every battle, even the ones that don't matter. Daniel did not fully believe this yet, but something about Walter's calm voice stayed with him. He left the park that day thinking differently, even if only a little. That evening, Daniel opened his phone to reply to the client. His fingers were ready to type an angry response. Then he remembered Walter's question. Does this really need my response? Daniel paused for the first time in a long time. He read the client's email again. Slowly, this time. The email was rude, yes, but underneath the rudeness there was a real problem to solve. Daniel took a deep breath and waited 1 hour before replying. When he finally wrote back, his message was short, calm. He explained a mistake simple solution. He defended himself. Attack back. The client's reply came the next morning. It was completely different in tone. Thank you for handling this so professionally, the client wrote. Daniel stared at the screen in surprise. 1 hour of waiting had changed everything. He felt something he had not felt in a long time, a small sense of peace. But old habits do not disappear in one day the next week. Daniel faced a new challenge. His brother Marcus called him about their father's birthday party. Marcus and Daniel had never been close. Marcus often made comments that annoyed Daniel deeply. This time, Marcus said something about Daniel's job. Still doing that marketing thing? Marcus asked. I thought you wanted something more serious. Daniel felt his chest tighten with anger. My job is serious, Daniel snapped. Not everyone needs to work in finance to be successful. The call quickly turned into an argument. By the end of the conversation, both brothers were shouting. Daniel hung up the phone. Breathing hard, he felt the familiar mix of anger and regret. Later that night, Daniel thought about Walter's words. He realized he had reacted without thinking exactly like before. He had forgotten to pause even for a moment. Daniel returned to the park a few days later. Walter was there again, sitting in his usual spot. Daniel told him about the fight with Marcus. I tried to remember your question. Daniel un moment. Walter smiled. Not so. That happens. Walter said, learning to pause is like learning anew. Language. You will make mistakes before you become fluent. Daniel appreciated the comparison as someone learning new habits. Mistakes felt less shameful now. He decided to keep practicing even after failing. Over the following weeks, Daniel started small experiments. Before replying to any message, he counted to 10 in his head. It felt strange at first, almost uncomfortable. At work, Rena made another comment about a project. This time, instead of arguing, Daniel paused. He asked himself the question silently. Does this really need my response? Daniel paused for the first time in a long time. He read the client's email again. Slowly, this time, the email was rude, yes, but underneath the rudeness there was a real problem to solve. Daniel took a deep breath and waited. 1 hour before replying, when he finally wrote back. His message was short and calm. He explained the mistake and offered a simple solution. He did not defend himself, and he did not attack back. The client's reply came the next morning. It was completely different in tone. Thank you for handling this so professionally, the client wrote. Daniel stared at the screen in surprise. 1 hour of waiting had changed everything. He felt something he had not felt in a long time, a small sense of peace. But old habits do not disappear in one day. The next week, Daniel faced a new challenge. His brother Marcus called him about their father's birthday party. Marcus and Daniel had never been close. Marcus often made comments that annoyed Daniel deeply. This time, Marcus said something about Daniel's job. Still doing that marketing thing? Marcus asked. I thought you wanted something more serious. Daniel felt his chest tighten with anger. My job is serious, Daniel snapped. Not everyone needs to work in finance to be successful. The call quickly turned into an argument. By the end of the conversation, both brothers were shouting. Daniel hung up the phone, breathing hard. He felt the familiar mix of anger and regret. Later that night, Daniel thought about Walter's words. He realized he had reacted without thinking, exactly like before. He had forgotten to pause even for a moment. Daniel returned to the park a few days later. Walter was there again, sitting in his usual spot. Daniel told him about the fight with Marcus. I tried to remember your question. Daniel de moment Walter smiled. That happens. Walter said, learning to pause is like learning a new language. You will make mistakes before you become fluent. Daniel appreciated the comparison as someone learning new habits. Mistakes felt less shameful now. He decided to keep practicing even after failing. Over the following weeks, Daniel started small experiments. Before replying to any message, he counted to 10 in his head. It felt strange at first, almost uncomfortable. At work, Rena made another comment about a project. This time, instead of arguing, Daniel paused. He asked himself the question silently. Does this really need my response? He realized Rena was simply trying to help, just like before. You might be right, Daniel said calmly. Let me look again. Rena looked surprised, but pleasantly so. Thanks for listening, she said with a small smile. The conversation ended peacefully with No tension at all. Daniel noticed something interesting that day when he did not react with anger. Conversations felt shorter and easier. Problems got solved faster without the extra emotional weight. At home, Elena also noticed a change. One evening, she made a small joke about Daniel being late. Normally, Daniel would have defended himself immediately. This time, he just smiled. "You're right, I should have texted you," he said simply. Elena looked at him, surprised by his calm response. "Who are you, and what did you do with Daniel?" she joked. Daniel actually laughed, instead of getting defensive. It felt lighter somehow, like putting down a heavy bag he had carried for years. Still, Daniel's transformation was not perfect. Some days were harder than others. Some triggers were stronger than his new habits. One afternoon, a coworker named Greg took credit for Daniel's idea in a meeting. Daniel felt his face grow hot with anger. He wanted to shout right there in front of everyone. He clenched his hands under the table. Instead, he asked himself the question, but the anger was too strong. "Actually, that was my idea," Daniel said, sharply interrupting Greg. The room went quiet for a moment. Greg looked embarrassed, and Mr. Patterson looked uncomfortable. Daniel immediately felt a mix of satisfaction and shame. After the meeting, Daniel felt frustrated with himself. He had reacted again even after weeks of practice. He walked to the park that evening, feeling like a failure. Walter was there, as always, sitting quietly. Daniel explained what happened, expecting Walter to be disappointed. Instead, Walter simply nodded. "You spoke the truth, and you didn't insult him," Walter said. "That's not the same as losing control. There's a difference between defending a fact and attacking a person." Daniel had not thought about it that way. He realized pausing did not mean staying silent forever. Sometimes pausing simply meant choosing clearer words. The goal is not to become silent about everything, Walter explained. The goal is to stop reacting from anger and start responding from calm thinking. Sometimes calm thinking still means speaking up. This idea comforted Daniel deeply. He had worried that changing meant losing his voice completely. Now he understood it differently. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel kept practicing. He was not perfect, but he was improving. His relationships slowly began to change. Rena became a genuine friend at work, not just a co-worker. Elena mentioned that their arguments had become rare and short. Even Mr. Patterson started giving Daniel bigger projects again. But the biggest relationship in Daniel's life remained broken. His relationship with Marcus stayed cold and distant. They rarely spoke, and when they did, tension filled every word. Then, one difficult week, everything changed. Their father became seriously ill and was taken to the hospital. Daniel and Marcus were forced to see each other again under painful circumstances. At the hospital, emotions ran high for both brothers. Fear, stress, and old resentment mixed together dangerously. It was the perfect situation for old habits to return. One evening, while waiting for news from the doctors, Marcus made a comment. If you visited more often, maybe you'd know he was getting sicker. The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. Daniel's whole body tensed with anger. This was it, the moment his old self would have exploded completely. Every instinct told him to attack back, to defend himself loudly. He almost did. Words were already forming in his mind, sharp and cruel, but then, unexpectedly, he remembered Walter's calm face. Does this really need my response? Daniel closed his eyes for 1 second. He thought about his father, lying in a hospital bed nearby. He thought about what truly mattered in that moment. It was not winning an argument with his brother. It was being there for their father together. Daniel took a slow breath. You're scared. And so am I, Daniel said quietly. Marcus looked up, surprised by the calm response. I'm not trying to fight with you right now, Daniel continued. I just want Dad to be okay. Marcus's shoulders dropped slightly, the tension breaking a little. I'm sorry, Marcus said after a long pause. I didn't mean that the way it sounded. I'm just scared too. For the first time in years, the brothers sat together without arguing. They talked quietly about childhood, memories, about their father, about fear. It was not a perfect reconciliation, but it was a real beginning. Their father recovered slowly over the following weeks. During that time, Daniel and Marcus spoke more often than they had in years. Old wounds did not disappear completely, but something had shifted. Daniel realized something important. During those hospital nights, his old habit of reacting had almost destroyed this relationship completely. One paused moment had given them a chance to rebuild it instead. Life continued, and Daniel kept practicing his new way of living. He still made mistakes sometimes, just like Walter had warned him, but each mistake taught him something new about himself. One evening, months after the hospital, Daniel returned to the park. He wanted to thank Walter properly for everything he had taught him, but when he arrived, Walter's usual bench was empty. Daniel waited for a while, but Walter did not appear. He asked another regular visitor if they had seen the old man. The woman looked at him with a gentle, sad expression. Walter passed away last week, she said softly. He was quite sick for a long time, though he never mentioned it to anyone. He always seemed so peaceful, didn't he? Daniel felt a heavy sadness settle in his chest. He had never even asked Walter about his own life, his own struggles. He realized Walter had been carrying something difficult, all while helping Daniel carry his own burden. That night, Daniel sat alone, thinking about everything Walter had taught him. A man facing his own serious illness had still chosen calm words over bitterness. His peace had not come from an easy life, but from a chosen way of facing a hard one. This memory stayed with Daniel for a long time. It made his commitment to Walter's lesson even stronger. He wanted to honor the old man by truly living what he had taught him. Now we return to the night at the beginning of this story. Daniel sitting alone, staring at his phone. At 11 at night, Marcus's cruel message glowing on the screen in front of him. This time, the situation was different. From the hospital, there was no shared fear, no shared father in danger, just an old argument about money, resurfacing after months of peace. Marcus had written something harsh about an old family debt. He accused Daniel of being selfish and irresponsible. The words were unfair, enterré, meant to hurt. Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard exactly as before. Every instinct screamed at him to defend himself immediately. This felt like the biggest test since the hospital, maybe bigger. He thought about deleting the message without reading it twice. He thought about calling Marcus and shouting everything he felt. Both options felt satisfying in that angry moment. Instead, Daniel put the phone down completely. He walked to his kitchen and made a cup of tea slowly. He let the anger sit in his chest without feeding it any words. Does this really need my response? He asked himself. Not right now, he decided. Not while I am this angry. Daniel went to bed without replying that night. It was uncomfortable, and part of him still wanted to argue, but he trusted the process Walter had taught him. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a clearer mind. The anger was still there, but it was quieter now. He read Marcus's message again, this time without the fog of midnight emotion. He noticed something he had missed the night before. Buried in the harsh words, there was real stress about money. Marcus was struggling financially, and fear was speaking through his anger. Daniel picked up his phone and called Marcus instead of texting. When Marcus answered, his voice sounded tired, almost embarrassed. I shouldn't have sent that message, Marcus said quietly. I was angry and I said things I didn't fully mean. Marcus continued. Daniel took a breath before responding. I know things have been hard for you. Daniel said calmly. They talked for almost an hour that morning, not about winning an argument, but about actually solving a problem. By the end of the call, they had a real plan to help with the debt. Daniel hung up the phone and sat quietly. For a moment, he thought about how different this outcome was from his old life. A single night of waiting had changed everything once again. In the months that followed, Daniel's life looked different. He was still the same person, with the same job and the same friends, but something inside him had fundamentally changed. He no longer believed that every insult needed an answer. He no longer believed that silence meant losing. He understood now that peace was a choice, made one moment at a time. Daniel still felt anger sometimes, and that was normal. He still felt hurt when people said unkind things. Emotions had not disappeared, but his relationship with them had changed. He learned to feel anger without being controlled by it. He learned to listen to criticism without immediately defending himself. He learned that walking away was sometimes the strongest choice available. His relationship with Elena grew steadier and calmer. His friendship with Rena became one of genuine trust. His connection with Marcus, though still healing, grew stronger every month. One evening, Daniel sat in the same park where he had met Walter. He watched a young couple arguing. loudly on a bench nearby. He recognized himself in the young man's angry expression. He thought about walking over and saying something, but he smiled instead, remembering that everyone finds their own path. Some lessons, he realized, cannot be given, only discovered. Daniel looked up at the darkening sky. Above the park, he thought about Walter, about his father, about Marcus, about Elena. He thought about all the arguments he never had and all the peace they gave him. The lesson was never about staying silent forever. It was never about becoming a person without feelings or opinions. It was about choosing when a reaction truly mattered and when it did not. Not every word deserves an answer. Not every person deserves access to your peace. Not every moment of anger deserves to become a permanent scar. Daniel finally understood what Walter meant all those months ago. A calm person is not weak. A calm person has simply learned where to spend their strength. As he stood to leave the park that evening, Daniel felt something new. It was not excitement, and it was not sadness. It was something quieter, something steadier. It was peace, not the peace of a life without problems, the peace of a person who had finally learned to choose his response.